Jala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmaya Shri Guruve Namaha Gurave Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Taravaktaya Namo Namaha Yam Pravajantamana Paityam Apaiti Krityam Dvaipaino Viraha Katara Ajurava Putreti Tammayatayo Taravo Binidustam Sarvabhutam Hridimanatoshmi. I'm first of all offering millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of our most beloved Gurudev, Nityalila Prabhupada Om Asto Tarasdara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again, millions and millions of times unto the lotus feet of our most beloved Nityalila Prabhupada Om Asto Tarasdara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And unto our illustrious Rupanuga Guru Vargya, and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, my Dandavat pranams to everyone. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So today is a very special tithi. It's the disappearance day of Lokanath Goswami. Lokanath Goswami, remarkable personality, very confidential personality. He was born in exactly the same year as Mahaprabhu, 1486. And he came to Navadvip in about 1508. Mahaprabhu takes sannyas in 1510. And Lokanath Goswami came just before Mahaprabhu was preparing to take the sannyas order. And he came with his uncle, Burgava Goswami. They both came together from what is now Bangladesh. This is where they came from. Lokanath Goswami's father, Padmanabha, was a great Vaishnava. I think he was a disciple of Advaita Acharya. So Lokanath Goswami from his birth was very much attracted to this path. But when he came and took darshan of Mahaprabhu, he was totally enamored, totally surrendered immediately to his lotus feet. But Mahaprabhu, perceiving that Lokanath was so soft-hearted, would have a difficult time bearing his sannyas lila when he left Navadvip. So he ordered him at that time to proceed to Vrindavan. He was the first Goswami to go to Vrindavan, him and his uncle Burgava. And they both went together. And we should appreciate at that time how dense was the forest of Vrindavan, how difficult the living must have been for these renounced personalities. There was no facility, nothing. They just lived in the forest in small leaf huts, more or less, you know. So Lokanath Goswami was like the pioneer. He was there to welcome Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami when they arrived. So he had darshan of Mahaprabhu perhaps for 12 months in Navadvip. And then he was requested to go to Vrindavan, the same as Rupa and Sanatana. Mahaprabhu had his mission. He had come with a mission, and he knew that it was imperative to establish Vrindavan Dham. He'd come to give us the Vrindavan Dham pastimes. This is why he had come. Krishna was 5,000 years ago performing his sweetest Madhurya pastimes in Vrindavan. And Mahaprabhu has come to gift us that Braja Prem, Braja Ras. So the forest of Vrindavan was essential for sadhaks to take shelter of in the future. Otherwise, how could they practice the meditation that Mahaprabhu wanted to benedict the sadhaks with? So coming to Vrindavan was very important for Mahaprabhu. So Lokanath and Burgava Goswami, they came there. And then after some time, short time, because Mahaprabhu takes sannyas in 1510. Then he goes to Jagannath Puri. And then he travels for 2 years in South India. And during that 2-year travel in South India, before he returns to Puri, then at that time, Lokanath Goswami had a great desire in his heart to again be reunited with his Mahaprabhu. So he left Vrindavan and he comes to South India searching for him. But during this time, after 2 years, Mahaprabhu had come back to Puri, and then he'd gone up to Ramkeli, and then he'd come back to Puri during this time. And then he decided, after a stay in Puri of about 8 or 9 months, to travel to Vrindavan via the Jharikanda forest. And then he reaches Prayag and then proceeds to Vrindavan. So during this time, Lokanath Goswami was in South India searching for Mahaprabhu. Then he heard, oh, Mahaprabhu has gone back to Puri. And as he was traveling back, he understood that Mahaprabhu has already reached Vrindavan. So he hurried to meet Mahaprabhu in Vrindavan. But Mahaprabhu only remained in Vrindavan for about 10 days because that Shyam Ras was starting to manifest in his consciousness. The cows would all come to him, the cowherd boys, and everything was reminding him of his Krishna identity, whereas he wanted to immerse himself in Radha Bhav. So it wasn't conducive for his desire to fulfill these 3 desires, Shiradaya Praniya Mahima, these 3 desires. So he left after 10 days and went to Prayag. And Lokanath Goswami arrived back in Vrindavan and heard that he'd gone to Prayag. So after his long journey to the South India, came back, then he decided he had to quickly go to Prayag and he would catch Mahaprabhu there. So him and Bhargava Goswami decided to go to Prayag, but then there was an aerial voice, or sometimes it's described that Mahaprabhu came in his dream, but he was directed to remain in Vrindavan and not to catch, and that Mahaprabhu would come later, at a later date. But Mahaprabhu never returned, actually. So Lokanath Goswami, he missed Mahaprabhu on those 2 occasions. He missed him in South India, missed him in Prayag. So he remained steady, constantly in, actually he lived in a place called Umrao, in Kishori Kund, is where he, in Kadirvan, is where he took up his bhajan. It's just from Varshana out towards Kamyavan, but before you get to Kamyavan and south a little bit, or east a little bit. That's actually where Kadirvan is. So he was searching for the holy places, and he was staying in Kishori Kund, and he had a strong desire to worship the Thakurji of Kishori Kund, who is Vinod Bihari, this Thakurji there. And there's different descriptions of how Vinod Bihari manifested. One is that a Brahmin came and just set the Thakurji in front of him. Another is that they just arrived by themselves. But in either condition, the Thakurji requested Lokanath Goswami to immediately feed them, that they were hungry. Lokanath Goswami, of course, was in ecstasy to have these deities given to him. And he immediately made preparations and was able to feed them. He was very, very renounced, very, very simple. But still he could gather fruits and roots and so on from the environment and feed him nicely. And then he made a beautiful cloth bag to carry Radha Vinod on his chest, and he would carry them everywhere he went. And later on, he gifted them to the Gokulananda Mandir. So in the Gokulananda Mandir, there is there's Radha Vinod Bihari, and there's the deities of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, bigger deities. I've forgotten their name. Remember the name? Bigger deities. Gokulananda, Radha Gokulananda of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And he gifted those deities to that temple. And today, his samadhi is in that temple compound. If you go there today and you're in Vrindavan, you have that opportunity. It's a very wonderful compound. It's like a family place. You have Lokanath Goswami in the high center there. And then Lokanath Goswami in his Manjari form is Manjulali Manjari. This is who he is in Krishna Lila, Manjulali Manjari. And he's very beautifully there. And his actual Manjari form is in a painting in his Samadhi. And in front of him, he has Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And off to his side, he has Narottam Das Thakur, who was his only disciple. He vowed he would never accept disciples. He was very renounced, and he had no desire to go into that world to support disciples. That was not his intention. But when Narottam Das came to Vrindavan with Srinivasacharya later on, then Jiva Goswami indicated that his guru should be Lokanath Goswami. And as soon as Narottam saw Lokanath Goswami, his heart immediately went to him and wanted him as his guru. But Lokanath Goswami was saying no, he wouldn't accept any disciples. Then Narottam, we know the story, went back at night and was cleaning the place where Lokanath Goswami would perform his ablutions every morning and clean the place so beautifully. And Lokanath Goswami was amazed, couldn't believe who had done all this. And he hid in the forest to find out who had done this. And then he captured Narottam one night, said, "What are you doing? You're a prince. Why are you doing this menial service?" Narottam is crying, begging, "Oh, I just want your shelter. I must have your shelter. I can't live without it." So Narottam had already approached Lokanath Goswami, and Lokanath Goswami had rejected him, said, "No, no." So he performed this pastime to clean his place where he was doing the ablutions. And then Lokanath Goswami requested him go to the Jamuna, take bath, come back, and then he gave him Diksha mantras. Then after some time, he was doing his chanting. He built a little hut next to Lokanath Goswami and was following everything, all the indications of Lokanath Goswami. Then one day while they were chanting, a farmer in the very heat of the day in summer came to Lokanath Goswami begging some water, or where was the bucket for the well to get the water. And Lokanath Goswami was totally absorbed in his bhajan, didn't respond at all. And then that same farmer came to Narottam Das and was begging for some water. Narottam Das set aside his mala and went to help that farmer secure the water with the bucket. And when Lokanath Goswami came out of his meditation, he understood what Narottam had done. And he said, "Now you immediately leave. You're not qualified for bhajan. You obviously can't be focused and centered. You don't put aside your mala to help someone get some water." He would have got water anyway from any place. He was thirsty enough. It wasn't your duty to serve the conditioned souls in that way. But it's very interesting because unless we understand deeply what it is to be immersed in bhajan, we can't really understand. It seems a little harsh that Lokanath Goswami would have requested him to leave. And Narottam was weeping and weeping. But Krishna arranges everything. Narottam had a great service in Bengal, preaching. Practically, he enlightened the whole of North Bengal. And so much area he preached. And so he came back to Jiva Goswami, and Lokanath Goswami stayed there and performing his bhajan. And then Lokanath Goswami, after this actually, was in Umrao and at Kishori Kund. And if you go to that place today, Kishori Kund, you'll see a beautiful bhajan kutia of Lokanath Goswami. And there's a description of Umrao is a very sacred place. Umrao is that place where Radha and Krishna perform their royal lila. Umrao means royal. And it was declared that Radharani is the Mahant. She is the empress of all of Braj. And all her Sakis went to proclaim that. And of course, Krishna heard that and called all his Sakas and said, "No, I am the Mahant." And there's a beautiful rock where Krishna was sitting like a throne. And he told all his Sakas, "You go and declare to everyone that I am the king of Braj. And this news, of course, got to Radhika and the Sakhis, and they came to attack Krishna with all flower balls and so many things like this. And then the Sakhas, they all ran away, because the Sakhis, they are ferocious when they get the instruction from Sri Radhika. And they all ran, but they caught Madhu Mangal, and they tied him up with a flower garland, slapped his face, and Madhu Mangal was weeping and saying, "Oh, just give me ladus, just give me ladus." And they said, "Who is this Brahmin boy? Send him away." And then he came back to Krishna. And then Radhika, she came into the place of Krishna. And as soon as, because they had dressed Radhika in a beautiful royal dress, and as soon as Krishna saw Radhika, and he also had his royal dress on, then they immediately stopped all their battling with each other, and Krishna invited Radhika to sit with him on the beautiful stone Singhasan, and together they were representing the king and the queen. But this very, very deep, beautiful pastime, it's a long pastime, I've told it very briefly, was where Lokanath Goswami stayed as an eternal maidservant of Sri Radhika. And then when Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj came to write his Chaitanya Charitamrita, he was requesting, of course, all the senior Vaishnavas to give him mercy to write such a scripture. And he had requested Madan Mohan. Madan Mohan's garland had fallen down. So Krishnadas Kaviraj came to Lokanath Goswami and requested him, "You please give me your blessings to write the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, more than even Vrindavan Das Thakur has written, because the Vaishnavas were not satisfied sufficiently, because Vrindavan Das Thakur hadn't written about the later pastimes in Puri practically at all. He'd just given indications. So because Krishnadas Kaviraj was staying with Raghunath Das Goswami, and Raghunath Das Goswami had all the notebooks and so on, he'd taken notes beautifully of all the later pastimes in Puri. So he would be able to guide Krishnadas Kaviraj in revealing these pastimes to the world. And of course, Raghunath Das had all the realizations from Swarup Damodar, who kept his kadachas, is described, in his throat of his mouth. And he revealed all these to Raghunath Das. But when he came to Lokanath Goswami to request his blessings, Lokanath Goswami said, "No, I won't give you any blessings. The only blessings I will give you if you absolutely vow not to mention my name in the Chaitanya Charitamrita." So this is very interesting. Lokanath Goswami didn't want any Diksha disciples. He didn't want his name to be mentioned at all. And we honor that. And Krishnadas Kaviraj doesn't mention his name once in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, not even in the branches of the different trees and so on. He's not mentioning his name because he vowed that he wouldn't. So for the sadhaks, it's a very warming mood that we appreciate in Lokanath Goswami, that he so much did not want any type of pratishta whatsoever from this world. He was realized fully, and he just wanted to perform immersion into his eternal seva, his Amala Prem seva, to Radha and Krishna Yugal. So this is the past. He left very late also. He left after Mahaprabhu. I've forgotten the exact date. I've got it, I can find it for you. He left 1588. So Mahaprabhu left 1534. Mahaprabhu stayed with us for 48 years. So do the mathematics. How old? He was over 100 years old, Lokanath Goswami. He was born in 1486 and he left in 1588. So he was 102 years old. So we can imagine the lifestyle he would have lived so simply, just on roots and fruits. We can learn from this how he contained his energy within his body to perform his bhajan, just very simply. And without any effort, he would live in Vrindavan. So for 102 years old, and he was like the oldest of all the Vaishnavas there. So he was most revered by Rupa and Sanatan and Raghunath Das when he came to take shelter of Vrindavan Dham. So we don't count Lokanath Goswami amongst the 6 Goswamis. When we say Rupa, Sanatan, Raghunath Das, Gopal Bhatta, and Jiva Goswami, these are the 6 Goswamis that we honor and we sing about, but we don't include Lokanath Goswami in there. But it doesn't mean that he's not as prominent or not as potent or not as special. He's just not included in that list of the 6 Goswamis. Just like Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. He was just as much a pioneer of Vrindavan Dham, appreciating this mood of putting Vrindavan on the map, just like Bhaktivinoda Thakur had to put the Yoga Pit on the map for everyone to acknowledge and recognize, yes, this is the birthplace. So all these deities by Brajanabra had to be rediscovered, the great grandson of Krishna. And Madan Mohan, Radha Govinda, and Gopinath, and Damodar, etc. All these deities had to be again had to be found, these lost deities, and established. So Krishnadas Kaviraj was so much a part of that, and so was Lokanath Goswami. It was like a team, so to speak, you know, of great manjaris, great saintly personalities, and they were working for their Swamini, Radhika. So very beautiful, we can imagine how Lokanath Goswami, but he left at a very late age, 102 years old. So this today we're celebrating. It's a celebration because we have an opportunity to speak about him. This is the Tirobhav. Tirobhav and Abhirabhav, both the same. We get an opportunity to glorify the personalities. So the other day on Friday, I think it was, Saturday, I forgot to glorify publicly Gopal Bhatta Goswami, but we did it afterwards, and I hope that all of you glorified Gopal Bhatta Goswami, because there's great mercy. There's great mercy today from Lokanath Goswami. If we meditate on him and his pastimes, and his great devotion, and his great tapasya in staying in Vrindavan in such austere circumstances for so long. So very wonderful. So Lokanath Goswami ki jai, Tirobhav ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. So now we come to our study of Jaiva Dharma. We're into the last 4 verses here. Jaiva Dharma pateshe shura bhakti hoy, Jaiva Dharma na palile kabe bhakti noy. One who reads Jaiva Dharma with faithful deliberation will surely attain Shuddha Bhakti. So we must read this Jaiva Dharma, all of us. But one who does not read Jaiva Dharma can never attain Bhakti. Why? Because all of the truths of Bhakti are so much clarified and so much systematically presented here. If you ignore this book, you're ignoring the greatest opportunity to set yourself on the path for Shuddha Bhakti. If you don't absorb these teachings, all Siddhanta that is necessary for us to walk on this path, especially the last 14 chapters in Rasa Tattva, but all create the beautiful platform for Amala Prem Seva, which is the final Falshruti. Rupanuga Abhiman Pate Trita Hoy, Jaiva Dharma Vimukake Dharma Hine Koi. Faithfully reading Jaiva Dharma will surely strengthen one's Abhiman as a Rupanuga follower of Sri Rupa Goswami. One who is averse to reading Jaiva Dharma is certainly devoid of religious principles. Cora, can you turn that fan down? I actually turned the last one off. It's making so much noise. That one, Gora. So one's Abhiman as a Rupa Nuga. We are followers of Srila Rupa Goswami, and we relish his teachings, and we relish all those personalities who embraced his teachings, who are all the 6 Goswamis, Krishnadas Kaviraj, Narottam, Srinivas, Shyamananda. All of these personalities embrace the teachings of Rupa Goswami. This is our Rupa Nuga Guru Vargya. Everyone is embracing all of these teachings, and each successive Acharya or Goswami would open out more, would reveal more of those teachings in their mood to assist Mahaprabhu in touching the hearts of all the deluded, conditioned souls. This Kali Yuga is in its darkest point. It actually hasn't even really begun. It's only been going for 5,000 years, but we see such horrors are being perpetrated on the planet already. Complete horrors with cow killing and so on, children abuse, and so much horror is there. But it's going to get a lot worse. But during this particular point in time, it's an amazing time, because all the negative aspect is there of Kali Yuga, but at the same time, the immense positive infusion of Mahaprabhu's mission. Why is it so immense and so positive? Because it's Radhika's movement. She is the one who is empowering it. I said previously, when we were glorifying Bhaktivinoda Thakur, how when the line became somewhat darkened for 100 years, then it's Radhika who threw her lotus into this world, this Kamala. So that Kamala Manjari is Bhaktivinoda Thakur picking up that lotus and taking forward the mission of Mahaprabhu. This is the condensed form of Mahaprabhu's teachings, this Jaiva Dharma, 100%. Java Jivane se je pade Jaiva Dharma, Bhaktiman se jana brita jnana karma. One who faithfully reads Jaiva Dharma throughout his entire life will be endowed with bhakti and will surely realize the futility of gyan and karma. So 3 verses, this word faithful, faithful, faithful. This means with Shraddha, have no doubts to the immaculate conceptions that are being presented here. Have not a whisper of shadow of doubt. Otherwise, we will not be able to embrace this fully to our heart's content. And the futility of jnana and karma. This is just like the verse, Anya Vilasita Sunyam, jnana karmadi anavritam. These are not necessary. We need sufficient jnana to enter the lila. We need tat padartha jnana, knowledge of Krishna. We need tvam padartha jnana, knowledge of the jiva's insignificant identity in service to Krishna. These 2 types of jnana are necessary. But this other type of jnana, Jiva Brahm Aikya Gyan, this knowledge of impersonal Brahman, is not necessary for our bhajan. It will impede our bhajan. We have to be fixed in this knowledge of Krishna's Swayam Bhagavan. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's Rasaraj completely. He's, Akila Rasamrita Sindhu completely. He's an ocean of rasa. And all of these potent realities about Krishna's supremacy, Krishna as the Supreme Lord, that tat padartha jnana has to be there in the jiva's heart. Otherwise, how can he put his full faith? And tvam padartha jnana, these 2 aspects of knowledge, but the rest, not necessary. Krishna Radhamala Seva Labhi Senara Seva Sukhe Magnaraha Sada Krishna Para. Such a man, being fully devoted to Sri Sri Radha Krishna Yugal Kishore, and having attained their Amal Prem Seva, remains forever merged in the bliss of such immaculate loving service. Once we attain that point of immaculate service, once we understand that extreme bliss of that service, then we will look to nothing else in this world. Once we realize that service, even a little bit, that service can be realized just through chanting Harinam. If we regularly take Harinam, we can get so much bliss can manifest in the heart to give us absolute confidence and shraddha. Yes, this is the path. And then how the consciousness is bathed in the sound vibration of the holy name daily. It must be daily because we're so conditioned. We have such thick walls of depending on our material identities. We are so afraid of different things in the material world. We're so insecure. But the soul itself is blissful in service to Sri Radha and Krishna, this Amal Prem Seva. Once even a little tiny window of that is gifted by Guru to the sadhak, then the sadhak is forever having the opportunity to be merged in that Amal Prem Seva, forever. This is what it's saying. Attain their Amal Prem Seva, remains forever merged in the bliss of such immaculate loving service. There's no need to do anything else except immerse ourselves in our eternal service to Radha and Krishna. So we have to find what is our eternal service. Our eternal service in this line, my Gurudeva said, if you come to Mahaprabhu, it's almost assured that you will have the adhikar to actually embrace the conception of Manjari Bhav. He said like this, we can't become Sakhis because where is the Sakhi that we're going to connect with to get the mantras for Sakhi Bhav? But Manjari Bhav, because all of our Rupanuga line, they're all Manjaris, all of them. So connecting with this Manjari Bhav is an option for the sadhak who's taken shelter of Mahaprabhu. And if we follow carefully the teachings of this Jaiva Dharma, we can become qualified to receive the mercy to actually enter this realm of Vrindavan, pure Vrindavan, and recognize our Swarup in connection with service to Radha and Krishna. This is guaranteed. So we need to take shelter of this incredible Grantha, this book, Jaiva Dharma. So now coming back to our subject matter, we've just entered into the Dasamula section, and we can just consider briefly, we've come through 12 chapters. I don't want anyone to forget the previous 12 chapters. Don't just think, oh yes, we've done the first section, we're going to forget about it, because Kali Yuga mind, you just forget in a second. So first chapter is Vaishnava Das meeting, or Sannyasi Thakur meeting Prem Das Babaji, and then being revealed his spiritual identity as Raman Manjari, right at the very beginning in that first chapter. First chapter is so powerful, contains everything. Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojan, all in the first chapter. Second chapter, Sannyasi Thakur is asking a beautiful question about the infinitesimal nature of the jiva. And if his nature is infinitesimal, how can he be eternal? If he's so small, how can he be eternal and with so much potency? And then Babaji explains that minuteness is not a trait of spirituality, just because it's very, very small. I mean, the spark of a fire, how small is a spark? And yet it can ignite the whole world if it hits dry bush and so on. This is continued in the second chapter. Third chapter, Vaishnava Das now, from Sannyasi Thakur, he takes the role of guru. And I discussed once previously how all of these personalities within the first 12 chapters, they're all demonstrating the nature of Guru and Sadhu Sangha. Krishna Bhakti Janma Mule, Hoya Sadhu Sangha, Krishna Prema Janma Tanev, Puna Mukhya Anga. That even in the stage of Krishna Prem, this Sadhu Sangha is necessary. So through all these chapters, Sadhu Sangha is so prominently there. And it's not discussed like the pages, the words of Sadhu Sangha, but we're seeing the experience of Sadhu Sangha. So this Sadhu Sangha is Vaishnava Das now. He has the name Vaishnava Das from Sannyasi Thakur. He's instructing Lahari Mahashai. Lahari Mahashai takes shelter of Vaishnava Das. In the 4th chapter, Vaishnava Das is giving teachings to Lahari Mahashai. In the 5th chapter, Lahari Mahashai becomes the guru. And he is instructing his son. And then his son becomes dissatisfied by seeing the Muslims, and he calls all the smarter Brahmins, and they challenge the Vaishnavas in the 6th chapter, Chudamani, etc. So that's the 6th chapter. 7th chapter is like the story of Chandidas and Damayanti, and meeting Yadava Das and going with Gaurachand, Anantadas, and then hearing the truths of the Vaishnava Sambandha related again. So the same teachings are coming regularly, but a different flavor each time to make us more equipped, to give us a greater vision of where is Bhaktivinoda Thakur carrying us. Then the 8th chapter is very special. It's when Vaishnava etiquette is discussed. What is a Kanishta, what is a Madhyam, what is an Uttam? And this is beautifully delineated and described in the 8th chapter. 9th chapter is Digambar. Some other ingredient is coming here. What is Bhaktivinoda Thakur teaching us here? Yes, the material world is a pretty rotten place. Has people like Digambar who are infatuated with material opulence and sensual, taste and so on. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur is bringing that personality out, much to the unhappiness of Advaita Babaji. So Lahari Mahashai has become Advaita Das Babaji now. So again, this transition from Shishya to Guru, Mahaprabhu, Yare Deke Tare Kahe Krishna Upadesh, Amare Agyan Guru Hana. Desh, that what Mahaprabhu is saying, that everyone in this land of India should become Guru. And I've described before, that doesn't mean that you're having millions of disciples or even thousands of disciples. It means you're just taking that responsibility in your life to educate those around you. The educator must become like a master to get sufficient respect to enter into these topics. These are most respectful topics. So the consciousness has to come to a respectable place of consciousness. So when you accept any teacher, if you want to learn anything, you have to have full respect for that personality. If you're doing driving, for example, you're learning that, you have to have respect for the person who's teaching you. If you're learning music, if you're learning any accomplished art, you need a master. If you're learning mathematics, you need a master all the way through. So this master has to take the role responsibly for the student. That is the meaning of Guru. So Advaita Das Babaji, now he's taking that role and he's trying to influence his degraded friend Digambar. Then in the 10th chapter, the Nyaya Ratna, he comes and he questions about the history of Vaishnava Dharma. This is an incredible chapter. The history of Vaishnava Dharma. Where does it sit in the entirety of time, so to speak, from the beginning, from Lord Brahma's birth to the end of annihilation of this material? Where is Vaishnavaism? Where is it? And it beautifully explained, mapped out. So we get a very good platform now for the future diving into deeper topics. So this is in the 10th chapter. 11th chapter, the Muslims come and they question about the deity form, and they can't accept something that is material as being spiritual. So this is a very important lesson for all the devotees to appreciate. What is the Siddhanta about Thakurji Seva? It's not something just concocted out of someone's mind. It's blessed by the great sages and saints. They are gifted with grace, with mercy from the Lord above, or the Lord in the heart rather. They actually see the vision of these personalities and they are able to describe them sufficiently or gift them to the person who's sculpting them. It's like Govinda Dev was actually carved by Rupa Goswami. So these personalities, they would make these deities themselves. They would manifest from their hearts. I don't know what is the history of Madan Mohan, but Sanatana Goswami, he was attracted to. But we know with Gopinath just here, how he was manifested by Mahaprabhu directly. So these deities are not anything mundane whatsoever. So all this is explained in chapter 11. Chapter 12 is an introduction to Brajanath and his connection with Raghunath Das Babaji. So this is very significant, very important. So please always remember these 10 chapters, have them etched in your consciousness and stroll through them yourselves, to keep up to speed with the whole picture. Because when we reach the 20th chapter, we still want to be reiterating what was in the first chapters, because we want to capture the whole of this divine book in our hearts to fully embrace the prayojan, the final chapters at the end. Everything is necessary for the prayojan tattva to take shelter. This palace of rasa, it must have good foundations. So these first 25 chapters are essential. So now we come to the verse, Amnaya Praha. I'm just going to quickly go through it. And again, in brief, refresh the meaning or the nature of this Dasamula. So Mahaprabhu has inspired the heart of Bhaktivinoda Thakur to present this. So Amnaya Praha, these are the teachings of the Vedas, the Shmriti Shastras, etc., and Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is the Praman. The first of the 10 is the Praman. So that is Amnaya Praha. Then Tattvam Harim Hiha Paramam. This is Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the first. There's going to be 3 descriptions of Krishna. So the first description, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Second is Sarva Shaktim. He is the possessor of all Shakti. And third, Rasamdim. He is the repository of all rasa. Raso Vaisa. Akila, Rasamrita Sindhu. He's the ocean of nectarian mela. So there in that first line, we have 1 Praman and 3 Pramayas. Second line, Tad Vibinams. This is Jiva Tattva. Who is Krishna? Who is the Jiva? What is the relationship between the two? Vibinamsa Tattva. The second is the Jiva that is bound by Maya. Actually, Kavalitam means swallowed. Prakriti, Jivan that is swallowed by the deluding energy. It's a beautiful graphic description. That's the second part of the Jiva, the 3 Jiva Pramayas. And then Tad Viminamsams Chabhaved, those who have realized through Bhav their liberated condition from this material world. So 3 aspects about the Jiva. Then third line, Beda Abeda Prakash Sakalam Api Hare, that the inconceivable difference and non-difference between the Jiva and Krishna is necessary to understand that I have a particle of Krishna within me. Jivera Sarup Hoy Krishnera Nityadas. I have that tiny spark of Krishna within me. That's what Vibinamsa means. I am separated part of Krishna. There's something there of Krishna. So the Jiva has to appreciate this within him. That part of consciousness that is coming directly from the Swamsa, not from Krishna himself, but from the manifestations of Krishna's avatars, the Swa-anks. Krishna is the Anksi, then there's the Swa-anks, then there's the Vibinamsa. So I know I'm repeating myself on these topics, but it's sometimes healthy to become very grounded indeed on these topics. So then the third Pramaya in this, or the second rather, Pramaya in this line, there's only 2 in this line, that Sadhanam Shuddha Bhaktim. What is the sadhan? The sadhan is Shuddha Bhakti. And this is what this is describing all the time. What is Shuddha Bhakti? What is pure Bhakti? Without any contamination of jnana or karma, etc. What is that Uttam Bhakti? What is Swarup Bhakti? Not Arop Siddha Bhakti, not Sangha Siddha Bhakti, but beyond that, what is Swarup Siddha Bhakti, Shuddha Bhakti. So that's described. And then Sadyam Tat Pritim. What is the Sadhya? This is the 10th. Well, we've had the Praman, and now we've had the final 10th Mula. This Sadyam Tat Piritim. This is love. This is transcendental love and affection for Krishna. Is the one and only final object of attainment. Sadhya Vastu. And then Evati Badashati Jnanam Gaura Chandra Swayam Saha. This is the opinion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, has accepted this. So this is where now we're galloping into, Rajanath is asking beautiful questions to substantiate the lineage. Yesterday we read about the Sampradaya Dara and its prominence, etc. What is the necessity of a Sampradaya? And we read this yesterday, that without the authorized Sampradaya, you can become very bewildered. Oh, I like this sadhu or this guru or whatever. I like the way he smiles. I like the way he walks or something. But we're not listening clearly to what he's saying. What is he supporting? Is he supporting various shastras? Is he guiding us on a pure, authentic road? Or is he expressing, because when we have performed devotional service for some time, in everybody a certain degree of liberation will take place. That means the consciousness, the mind, is liberated from many of the material shackles. And in that liberated state, you can conceive and concoct all kinds of different options for the jiva to move on, rather than stay very closely to following the injunctions of Shastra. We have to stay. Of course, we're having the realizations of the injunctions of Shastra within us, but to proceed carefully on the royal road of this Sampradaya Dara and not to deviate, especially in this time of Kali Yuga. So many false gurus are rising now because there's so many difficulties happening in the global world. And so many gurus will come. We have the internet. It's every person who has a little bit of charisma and knows how to speak is going to jump on the internet and make his own bid to collect followers and so on. People are so vacant inside that they think that by having lots of followers, I'll become happy. I'm not knowing how to love myself truly as my real identity as a servant of Krishna. So I have to have lots of followers to support my inadequacies or to cover up my insecurities. I need lots of followers to help me. And sometimes the followers, they need each other for security, rather than just individually recognizing where is the truth individually. This is an individual path, I've said so many times, just like the example I've given all the time of the gopis running to Krishna. In the night, they ran alone. They didn't run in a group. And like entering into Varshana, you go through Sankariko, you can only go alone. It's a single path. The individual has to realize his relationship with Guru and the whole Guru Parampara. And he has to realize independently that. So this is the nature of bhakti. She's independent. And if that independent bhakti is going to rise in the heart, then the jiva is naturally, internally, is going to be independent. But externally, he can be very much in a group or something like that. But internally, he has to be secure. Otherwise, what can he give the group if he's just taking for his own dependence? So one question after the Sampradaya: are the names of all the acharyas in the Sampradaya available in order of succession? Babaji, only the names of the most prominent acharyas who have appeared from time to time are mentioned. That's important to appreciate. There are many, transformers, but in between the transformers of the principal acharyas, there are many telegraph poles just carrying the current. Not every guru is an acharya. So the acharyas are particularly empowered personalities. And from the acharyas will come many, not lesser, but personalities who are not having so much external or potency. Then they're not having so many followers, etc. Just these individual connecting gurus. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes?
It seems so.
Huh?
It seems so as of now.
Okay. If I'm not hearing you confidently say, yes, I understand, I know that you don't. So you tell me back what I said. The last part about independence.
The main acharyas, they basically train their disciples to the level of gurus.
Yes.
And they have almost equal potency of them, so that they can further transform the same knowledge
Yes.
To their own disciples,
Yes.
or they can preach accordingly.
Yes. But they don't necessarily have millions of disciples the same as the acharya had. So there are acharyas and there are regular gurus carrying the acharya's words into the next generations. Not everyone is going to be an acharya. If we get confused on this, thinking, oh, guru means I have to become the acharya, then it's going to be confusing for us, because that's not the path, like we've just been discussing about Lokanath Goswami. He didn't have any disciples. Does that mean he wasn't sufficiently empowered? Rajanath, I would like to hear the Guru Parampara of the Brahma Sampradaya. Babaji, listen.
Paravyameshwarasya Shishyo Brahma Jagatpati Tasya Shishya Narada Buddha Vyasa Tasyap Shishyatam.
Brahma, the master of the universe, is the disciple of Parameshwara, Sri Narayan, and Naraji became the disciple of Brahma. Vyasadeva became the disciple of Naraji.
Shuko Vyasasya Shishyatvam Prapto Jnana Varodhanat Vyasallabdho Krishna Diksho Madhvacharyo Mahashaya.
Sri Shukadev Ji became the disciple of Sri Vyasadeva in order to check the spread of impersonal Gyan, because he was manifesting himself as an impersonalist, as a Leela from birth. The celebrated Madhvacharya also received Krishna Diksha from Sri Vyasadeva. Narahari became the twice-born Shishya of Madhvacharya.
Tasya Shishyo Narahristaj Shishyo Madhavo Dvijah Akshobhyas Tasya Shishyo Bhutat Shishyo Jayatirthakah.
Madhava Dvija became the disciple of Narahari. Akshobhya was Madhava Dvija's disciple and accepted Jayatirtha as his disciple.
Tasya Shishyo Jnana Sindhu Tasya Shishyo Mahanidhi Vidyanidhi Tasya Shishyo Rajendra Tasya Sevakah.
Jnana Sindhu became the disciple of Jayatirtha. Mahanidhi became Jayasindhu's disciple and accepted Vidyanidhi as his disciple, and Rajendra became the disciple of Vidyanidhi.
Jaiva Dharma Munistasya Shishyo Yad Kanmadhyata Srimad Vishnu Puriyastu Bhakti Ratnavali Kriti.
Jaiva Dharma Muni became the disciple of Rajendra, and one of his followers, named Sri Vishnu Puri, who composed Bhakti Ratnavali, was a prominent acharya.
Jai Dharmasya Shishyo Bhut Brahmanya Purushottama Vyasatirthas Tasya Shishyo Yas Chakre Vishnu Samhita.
Jayadharma's disciple was Brahmanya Purushottam, who in turn accepted Vyasatirtha, the author of Vishnu Samhita, as his disciple.
Srimal Lakshmi Patis Tasya Shishyo Bhakti Rasashaya Tasya Shishyo Madhavendro Yat Dharmoyam Pravartitah.
Sri Lakshmipati became the disciple of Sri Vyasatirtha, and Madhavendra Puri, who was the epitome of Bhakti Ras and who propagated the Bhakti Dharma, was the disciple of Lakshmipati. This is so important to appreciate. I was thinking as we were going through them, it's just exactly like Srimad Bhagavatam in the various chapters of the Bhagavatam where they delineate the dynasties. We've spoken about this. Unless you have a clear dynasty, then how can the authenticity of what you're presenting be credible? How can it be accepted by intelligent people? Because as we practice this path, our intelligence is going to increase with the mercy of the holy name, with the mercy of the Vaishnavas, with the mercy of our Guru Parampara. So we will naturally question these things. So if it's very, very clear, and this is so important today, because I've just said there are so many gurus in the market today. So many. You go on YouTube and you can probably find, what, 200, 300, 400 straight away, more. I don't know. I haven't looked at it. There probably are many, many different. Some will be this, just directly talking about the body and yoga and stuff. And others will be trying to facilitate the desires of the general populace to revere them as guru. But if none of them can give their lineage, they're all bogus. They may have a drop of truth in what they're presenting, and that drop has given them the confidence to present it. But unless they themselves have surrendered to their guru, and their guru surrendered to his guru, because I've said before, guru is like, I think the word is hologram of all the gurus. When you think of Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, he is the embodiment of Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj, who is definitely the embodiment of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, who is definitely the embodiment of Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, and his great father, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, who is definitely the embodiment of Jagannath Das Goswami, his barbs and moods, etc. And then all the way back to Rupa Goswami, who is the embodiment, Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam, Shtapitam Yena Bhutale. He was the embodiment of the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was Rupa Goswami. So that's who all these personalities are. They're the embodiment of their gurus. So this line is essential to appreciate. And we sing every morning that, what's that verse? Krishna Hoite Chatumukha, this beautiful bhajan, delineating all of these personalities. Why do we sing that every day? Every morning in all of our temples is to encourage us to examine and appreciate the authenticity of our lineage. We're very lucky that we have this clear line. It is that there's no room for, no shadow for doubt. It can't be discarded, this philosophy. Rajanath, in the first shloka of Dasamula, the Vedas are accepted as the sole evidence, praman, whereas the other pramans, such as pratyaksha, direct perception, are accepted as evidence only when they follow the Vedas. However, philosophies such as Nyaya and Sankhya have accepted further types of evidence. Well-versed readers of the Puranas have accepted 8 types of praman: pratyaksha, direct perception; anuman, inference based on generalized experience; upaman, analogy; shabda, revealed knowledge; aitihya, traditional instruction; arthapati, inference from circumstances; sambhav, speculation; and anupalabdhi, understanding something by its non-perception. Why are there so many opinions regarding praman? And if direct perception and inference based on experience are not counted among the perfect pramans, how is it possible to get real understanding? Brilliant question. Really, really brilliant question. Kindly enlighten me. So he's asking very beautiful question. If we have these pramans, why are they not being included within the ingredients for this path? Why are they not being emphasized or highlighted? So Babaji is going to answer this tomorrow. It's a very nice question, very beautiful question. And we'll go over the question again tomorrow also, each time. As I've said many times, this is very dense reading. You can't gloss it. You can't gloss a single sentence and think, oh yes, I've done. We're not trying to finish this book. We're trying to immerse ourselves in this granta, in this book. That's our objective, to become immersed in the teachings of Jaiva Dharma, not just to complete the book. Completing the book will happen or not happen according to our enthusiasm, but to get energy from understanding these different topics. So Jaiva Dharma ki jai,
Jai.
Lokanath Goswami ki jai, Vrindavan Dham ki jai,
Jai.
Sachinandan Gaurahari ki jai,
Jai.
Gopinath, Lalita Saki, Radharani ki jai,
Jai.
Jagannath Baladev Subhadra ki jai,
Jai.
Puri Dham ki jai,
Jai.
Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda ki
Ki
jai,
jai.
Gaur Pregnanandi,
Hari
Vancha
Hari
Kalpa
Bol.
Tarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Bevacha, Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnava